Daphner, and I am one of Rachel's riders. I am honored today to be able to speak about Rachel, somebody that had a full life and was an integral part of the West Coast Reining Horse Association. So Rachel was born on June 11th, 1949 in Brooklyn, New York, and she was a horse crazy girl, like most people. And when she was about 13, her family moved to California. And she was always begging her parents for a horse, right? Like all of us, horse crazy girls. Well, one day her parents said, all right, if you can pay for half the horse, I will let you have a horse. And she immediately ran upstairs, grabbed 4 shoe boxes full of cash from babysitting, and laid them on the kitchen table and said, this is what I got. And it was more than enough for a horse. And at 13, she got her very first horse. Soon after, she would get a Morgan quarter horse cross named Old Sorreltop. And he was a big horse with a Forest Service US brand on him. She'd ride that horse for many years. And side note, he was trained, like the old horses in the day, to leap in the back of a pickup truck. So if he was walked near the bed of a pickup truck, you had to be really careful because he was really quick to leap in a truck. So Art Fingerle and Rachel met in Thousand Oaks, California, showing horses. Rachel was into team roping, and she was one of the only women in the Pleasance Valley Riders and Ropers out of Camarillo. Now, before Art could date her, he had to go and talk to each of the older ropers to get permission to make sure he was good enough, because they were very protective of Rachel. So finally, when he worked up the courage to go ask her out, she denied him. She said, nope, I'm not going out with you. She was more interested in horses than anything. But Art had a plan. His plan, he had a famous J. Sizzler bred Australian Shepherd, and he was going to breed that dog, and he knew Rachel wanted a puppy. So he made arrangements with a friend to get a free breeding if Rachel could have pick of the litter. She got her puppy, and they started dating. Soon after, Art was drafted into the Army and sent to Houston, Texas to become a medic and an ear, nose, and throat specialist. From there, he was stationed in San Francisco, and although he had a super tight schedule, he made arrangements to go visit home, and they went down to get their marriage license at the courthouse. But the judge happened to be in, and so they got married that day, July 24th, 1971. And there happened to be a big barbecue at the roping arena, so they went down and celebrated. So soon after, Art was drafted into the Army, and he got orders to go to Vietnam. While en route, they were at Fort Lewis Army Base in Washington, and thankfully Art was diverted, and they stayed locally so he could work at a hospital, and Rachel was the riding instructor for Fort Lewis in Washington, and she absolutely loved it. At that time, she was also running barrels and poles. Now, she still had that old Sorreltop horse, but he was retired, and everybody made fun of her because this horse had a Forest Service US brand, and Rachel said, okay, that's fine. Well, at the next horse show, she pulled that horse out of retirement, and she won every single class. So Rachel and Art still had their Australian Shepherds, and the military dog trainers turned the Australian Shepherds into protection dogs. And Rachel's dog was so ferocious, all the trainers were scared. He always went for the crotch. They had the only dogs on the entire Army base that were voice trained and certified with a veterinarian letter. That dog loved Rachel fiercely. So among Rachel's love for dogs and horses, she was through and through an artist. From a very young age, she was always doodling works of art. In fact, some of her artwork has been given away at the year-end shows, and she would also do an occasional contract Some of those prizes were if you won the horse, whatever class was the prize that her drawing was, you gave her a photo, she would do a piece of artwork for you of yourself. So a lot of her friends have these really special mementos that she made. So she was commissioned to do a drawing for the famous Old West actor Slim Pickens and his 2 Australian shepherds. After he received this birthday gift, he was so excited, he found where Rachel lived, went and bought every piece of artwork she had, including some very large oil paintings. Later, Art would go see him and go into his home office, and he had spotlights on some of her biggest pieces. Art was a crucial part of who Rachel was. So in 1978, they moved to Elk Grove, and she helped form the West Coast Reining Horse Association as a charter member on March 17, 1982. And throughout the years, she took on many roles. She served as president, vice president, secretary. She even announced shows when needed, and she'd even fill in as scribe, which she loved doing. She loved being a scribe. Even up until recently, she was responsible for tracking all the membership. So you might have talked to her as a membership person, and she would track all the points, including what went into the year-end saddle and the high point for the year. So she was still having an active role. Many of you might have seen her scrapbooks that she would do every year. She did these scrapbooks, and she'd bring them out on the tables during the banquets. The legacy of this organization was incredibly, incredibly important for Rachel. She considered West Coast her baby. People came and went, but Rachel was steadfast. She was committed. She was at every meeting like a rock. There were years when the club struggled, and she felt that financial burden of those promised payouts. And she, along with other participants, would participate in all sorts of fundraising activities and whatever it took to keep things going. Yard sales even. Rachel always remembered those hard times. And sure, she butted heads with some people, probably came off as a little unyielding, people that know her, but she never wanted anything to jeopardize the future of West Coast. Right or wrong, she viewed this organization as an extension of herself. Any thoughts that she shared always came from a place of love and protection towards this group. Rachel never believed in shortcuts. If she had an idea or a belief, she was unwavering. Stubborn, committed, she always stood by doing what was right. You could call her ornery. All of us that know and loved her, she was ornery. But anyone that took the time to get to know her realized that behind this tough, strong, formidable woman was this sweet, kind, and extremely loyal friend. She had quite the sense of humor once you got to know her. When she would break out laughing uncontrollably, she'd snort, and then that made her laugh even more, which was adorable, and she just couldn't help it. As a teacher, Rachel had a way with words. Her patience and way of articulating ideas impacted a generation of riders. Back in the day, Rachel had a slew of students, and she'd go out to the quarter horse shows. And you know when they have classes that don't have enough riders for points, you try and get people to come into those classes just to have enough? Well, the trainers would ask Rachel's riders to go in the class, and then they would start winning the class. And then pretty soon, the trainer stopped asking for her students. And Art still worked the back gate at that time. So he heard all sorts of frustration from trainers who didn't realize that Rachel was his wife. I always appreciated how she empowered her riders. She wanted us to think and be responsible for ourselves. We warmed up our own horses. She wanted us to know what to do without her standing right next to us. She wanted us to be successful without her being right there and telling us play by play what we needed to do. She'd often say if we were struggling, okay, how would you fix that? Whatever it took to make us think. Rachel always respected her animals as individuals, never tools. Her horses lived, they were born and died on her property. She never sold any of them. And I always appreciated how our lessons were spent sometimes talking more than writing, but she knew that if I understood the concepts, the visualization, the meaning and the end goal, then I would be so much further along as a rider if I understood the importance of what she was trying to teach. And Rachel was serious when it came to competing. Anybody knew her around the ranch riding pen? She was an intensely focused competitor. She ate like crap at the shows, somehow surviving on red vines, Oreos, and Pepsis, but she was focused and she won. There's training and then there's showing, she would often say. Ride the horse you have today. And she taught us to show in the moment. All of us riders are still listening for her voice today. We're still desperately listening for those nuggets of wisdom that she would share with us. Inside leg, outside rein. I didn't know what that meant until I started working with her. Like a beautiful diamond, Rachel had many facets to who she was. She will be remembered as a wife, an avid horsewoman, an Australian Shepherd lover, a creative artist, a West Coast Reining Horse Association founder, a patient teacher, a cherished mentor, a loyal friend, and somebody who would fight for what they believed in. Rachel, you left your mark on this world. And so many people and animals are better because of you. Thank you.